Have you ever walked out of a room and thought, did I just lose my future because of one sentence? I did, and it wasn't because my English was bad. It was because I was terrified to be seen. This video isn't just a story. It's a confession about fear, shame, identity, and the moment I realized English was never just a language, it was a mirror. You'll discover how one painful mistake rewired my mindset faster than years of studying, and how the same shift could save you from losing your next opportunity. Because the truth is, most people don't fail because of grammar. They fail because they never train the one thing that matters most when it's time to speak, their nervous system. Stick with me, because what you're about to hear might feel like your own story, and by the end, you'll walk away with something no textbook ever gave you: clarity, courage, and your voice, finally, unblocked. It wasn't the grammar, it wasn't the accent, it was that familiar fog, the one that clouds your mind when all eyes are on you and you feel like you don't belong. He sat in that interview room, rehearsing answers in his head. But when the simple question came, "Tell me about yourself," nothing came out. His mouth moved, but his mind froze. Not because he didn't know the answer, but because deep down, he didn't believe he was worthy of being heard. You see, English wasn't the real problem. The real problem was the silent voice in his head saying, "Don't mess this up. Don't embarrass yourself. Don't let them see you." That voice didn't speak English. It spoke fear, and fear is fluent in every language. He smiled and pretended everything was okay, but inside, he was crumbling. This wasn't just an interview, it was a mirror, showing him everything he was running from. When he walked out of the building, the air felt heavier, not because of rejection, but because of shame. He kept thinking, why couldn't I just speak? Why did I freeze? But that question wasn't new. It had lived in him for years. From classrooms to conversations, he had always hidden behind the excuse, "I need better English." But that day something cracked, and the truth leaked through. That moment didn't hurt because of the job. It hurt because it exposed a wound that was much older, a wound that whispered, "You don't belong here." And that lie had lived in him for so long. It had become part of his identity. That's what fear does. It attaches itself to your language, your confidence, your future, until you start believing that silence is safer than trying. That day, he realized he had been hiding behind English, when what he was truly hiding from was himself. For the first time, he sat alone and faced that pain, not like a victim, but like someone ready to listen to the truth. He wrote in his notebook, slowly, shakily, "I can face difficult moments." He said it out loud, again and again, until the sentence stopped feeling foreign. That wasn't just a language exercise. It was a decision, a promise, a first brick in rebuilding his sense of self. And here's something powerful. That job he lost, it gave him something no job ever had: clarity. He realized he had been studying English like it was armor. But what he needed was healing, not better vocabulary, but better self-worth. He didn't need another textbook. He needed to look in the mirror and say, "I belong in every room I enter," not because of perfect English, but because his presence mattered. This wasn't about fluency. It was about visibility. For so long, he thought the goal was to speak without mistakes. But now, he understood the real goal: to speak with honesty, even if his voice trembled, to be seen, to stop performing, to show up fully, in English, in life, in identity. And so, for the first time in years, he spoke 10 seconds of raw, unscripted truth into his phone. "My name is Daniel. I'm scared, but I'm not hiding anymore." That recording wasn't perfect. His voice cracked, his grammar stumbled, but it was real. And sometimes real is what changes everything, because when you stop trying to sound perfect and start trying to sound present, everything shifts. That day didn't end with success. It ended with awakening, and awakening always leads to one of two roads: denial or action. And if you're not careful, you might choose the one that feels comfortable, but costs you your future. If your goal is to stay stuck, here's the formula. Keep translating every sentence in your head. Try to sound perfect before you speak, and most importantly, wait until you feel confident. That way, you'll never actually use your English in real life, just in your imagination. That's how you freeze when the moment comes. Let's be honest. You don't need more lessons. You need more mistakes. Yes, you heard that right. If you keep waiting for motivation to study, you'll miss every window of progress. Growth doesn't knock politely. It barges in while you're tired, insecure, and overwhelmed. Fluency doesn't come to the motivated, it comes to the consistent. So here's the deal. If you want to feel more regret, only study on the good days. You know, the days you feel inspired, peaceful, energized, and on the hard days, scroll, distract yourself, pretend tomorrow will be better. That's the easiest way to stay exactly where you are, full of potential and empty of results. And if you're scared of being judged, perfect, keep hiding. Don't use English in public. Don't speak unless you're sure you'll sound perfect. That way, no one can criticize you. But also, no one will see you. Not your boss, not your future, not your dream life. Hiding is comfortable, but it's expensive. It charges you in missed opportunities. Want to make sure nothing ever changes? Here's how. Believe your mistakes mean you're not ready. Every time you mess up, tell yourself, "See, I knew I couldn't do this." Ignore the fact that babies learn by falling, that musicians learn by playing wrong notes, that confident speakers were once silent too. Keep thinking perfection is the price of progress, and watch progress disappear. But if something in you whispers, "Maybe I don't want to lose another opportunity," then flip the script. Practice 3 phrases out loud today, without translation. Just say them, even if they sound strange, even if you pause. This is how fluency is built, one awkward attempt at a time. You're not failing, you're rewiring your brain. And if you've been waiting for motivation, don't. Start a tiny 5-minute ritual today. Read 1 page, shadow 1 voice, record 1 messy sentence. These moments, small, boring, unglamorous, are the ones that actually shape your future. You won't feel powerful while doing them, but later, when life gives you a chance, you'll realize you're finally ready. And finally, if you've been silent because of shame, speak 1 line in English today. At a cafe, with a colleague, online, anywhere. Do it not because it's comfortable, but because you're done letting fear run your life. Yes, you'll make mistakes, but that's not the point. The point is, you showed up, and people who show up, grow up. He had waited years for that interview. The job was perfect, international team, growth, travel. He wore his best suit, practiced his answers, even rehearsed a smile. But when the questions started flowing in English, his confidence evaporated. His heart raced faster than his thoughts, and suddenly, silence. Not because he didn't know, but because fear spoke louder. On the train home, he didn't cry. He collapsed inside. That night, he sat on his bed, staring at the wall, replaying every word he didn't say. The worst part wasn't losing the job. It was realizing how much he had avoided. He had studied English for years, but never practiced being seen. And now, the silence he gave in that interview haunted him. That was the moment his mindset changed. He didn't want revenge. He wanted rebirth. He grabbed his phone, opened the voice recorder, and said out loud the sentence he wished he had said, "I'm a quick learner, and I'm excited to grow with this company." His voice shook, but it was his first step toward reclaiming the future he had left on that interview chair. From that night on, he made a quiet vow. No more passive learning. He started reading graded readers every night. Not 5 chapters. Just 5 minutes. Not perfectly, sir, but consistently. While brushing his teeth. While waiting for the kettle. Even when he was tired. Because now it wasn't about grammar. It was about freedom. Weeks passed. Then months. He no longer studied for tests. He studied for life. English became his mirror, his gym, his therapy. He whispered affirmations in the morning, shadowed videos in the evening. No more waiting for confidence. He created it through action. And each small win added a brick to a self-worth he had once buried. Then it happened again. A new opportunity. A company called. Another interview. Same setup. Same nervous heart. But something had changed. He didn't walk in trying to impress. He walked in trying to connect. This time when they asked, "Why should we hire you?" he didn't translate. He smiled and answered from presence. His voice was clear, not flawless, but grounded. He spoke slowly, simply, honestly, not to show off, but to show up. Because when you stop performing and start sharing, people feel it. And this time they didn't just hear his English, they heard him. After the interview, he didn't wait in fear. He went to a cafe, ordered in English, and toasted his own growth. That job? He got it. But more importantly, he got himself back. Because sometimes pain doesn't break you. It introduces you to the version of you that refuses to be silent ever again. And the best part? That first sentence he recorded months earlier. He now uses it to help others prepare. But there's something even more powerful he learned later. Most people think they fail English because of memory or intelligence. But the truth is deeper and much more human. When the brain feels unsafe, it stops accessing language. It's not about forgetting words. It's about survival mode. Your nervous system isn't preparing to speak. It's preparing to escape. Have you ever felt your mind go blank right before speaking? That's not laziness. That's a freeze response. Your body sees English as a threat, not a tool. Why? Because of past experiences where speaking led to shame, laughter, or silence. The brain says, avoid this, but you can teach it something new. If you start with safety, before you study, speak, or enter any English space, pause, breathe deeply. Just 20 seconds of calm breathing can tell your nervous system, I'm not in danger. Inhale slowly, exhale fully. This one habit, repeated daily, will start to unlink English from panic, because the real fluency you're building starts with peace. Here's the next trap, over-identification. When you tie your identity to your performance, every mistake feels personal. If you say I goed instead of I went, it doesn't just feel like a grammar error. It feels like you are broken. But here's the truth. A mistake is data, not identity. Write it down. Say it. Live it. Your brain also remembers pain. If your first public speaking moment ended in embarrassment, that emotion stuck. That's why you avoid English, even if you love it. It's not about the language, it's about what it represents. To rewire this, you need to create one positive English experience today. Just one. Maybe say thank you to a waiter, or introduce yourself to someone new. Each time you feel safe speaking English, your brain forms a new association. This is called neuroplasticity, and it works best with repetition and emotion. So celebrate small wins, reward yourself after speaking, smile at your own courage. You're not just building sentences, you're rebuilding trust with your nervous system. The magic of this process is this. Confidence isn't built in your mouth, it's built in your memory. When your body remembers that it can survive a conversation, even an awkward one, it stops sounding the alarm. So start simple. Say, hello, how are you? To someone today. Not to be perfect, just to be present. Every time you speak with calm, you rewrite the story your brain tells itself about English. And the more you do that, the more fluent you become. Not just in language, but in self-trust. Because fluency is not speed. Fluency is safety and expression. And that safety can only grow when you stop judging yourself and start rewiring. Did you enjoy the content and it made a difference for you? Click on Super Thanks and support our work. At first it felt like the end. Losing the job wasn't just about money or status. It was about what it represented. A future that had been imagined, prepared for, dreamed about suddenly vanished, and in its place, emptiness. But as the days passed, something unexpected appeared inside that silence. A deeper question. What if this pain was pointing to something I've ignored for too long? Because the truth is, it wasn't just a job he lost. He lost a version of himself, the version that always played it safe, the version that smiled politely but never challenged his fears, the version that blamed English, timing, or luck, but never asked, "What am I still hiding from?" Grief, yes, but not just for the job, for the years spent not fully showing up. And then came the hardest moment. Not facing the interview panel, not telling friends he didn't get it. The hardest part was looking in the mirror and realizing he was the one who doubted himself the most. That inner judge, so loud, so cruel, wasn't the world. It was him. And that kind of honesty doesn't break you. It breaks you open. He opened a notebook and started writing, "My future is still possible." It felt awkward at first, but with each word something shifted, not outside, inside. He wasn't just journaling, he was taking responsibility, and that's when ambition came back. Not the ego kind, but the sacred kind, the one that says, "I'm meant for more." Not because I'm special, but because I'm willing to evolve. From that pain, a new compass appeared, one that didn't point to comfort but to growth. He began to feel it in his daily life, the urge to rise, to rebuild, to use every English sentence as a brick toward a new foundation. He started asking, what would my future self say in this moment? And sometimes he whispered that sentence out loud as a practice of becoming. One morning, standing in front of the mirror, he said quietly, "I won't let fear cost me anything ever again." And that wasn't a motivational quote. It was a vow. The kind you write on a post-it note and place next to your toothbrush. The kind you repeat when doubt creeps in. That vow became his anchor, not to push harder, but to remember who he refused to be anymore. Because in the end, he realized something essential. Pain is not the enemy. Stagnation is. Regret is. Playing small is. And while rejection stings, staying in the same emotional place for another 5 years, that's what truly destroys people. He saw too many friends wait for the right moment to change. He didn't want to be one of them anymore. So he stood up, stretched his shoulders, and opened his laptop. Not to scroll, but to apply. Not for another job, but for the next chapter. And with his voice, trembling but present, he spoke a single sentence to the camera. This time, "I will not disappear." But of course, to truly become that version of yourself, you need more than words. You need something much deeper and much more scientific than most people realize. Most people think learning is just repetition. Read, repeat, remember. But the brain doesn't work like a machine. It works like a storyteller. And the stories that stick are the ones loaded with emotion. That's why heartbreak, shame, and regret leave a stronger mark than textbooks ever will. The day he lost that job was the day English became unforgettable. That failure hit hard, but it also lit a fire. Because when the brain feels deep emotion, it opens a window called emotional encoding. It starts recording more clearly, more deeply. The phrases he forgot in the interview, he never forgot them again. He tied them to pain. And pain, for better or worse, makes lessons permanent. But here's the beautiful part. After emotional failure, the brain also becomes more receptive to new patterns. This is called the consolidation rebound. It's like the mind saying, "We need a new system, fast." And that's why it's powerful to study right after failure, even just 3 minutes. The brain is ready to rewire, not tomorrow, now. So that's what he did. He didn't wait for motivation. He opened his English app while still feeling the sting. He shadowed 1 minute of native speech while the tears were still drying. He wasn't punishing himself. He was giving his brain the gift of fresh direction. Emotion is fuel, if you use it before it fades. Soon, he replaced random habits with daily rituals. Every morning, 1 sentence out loud. Every night, 1 phrase shadowed. It wasn't big or flashy, but it was automatic. And that's the secret. Rituals activate a brain loop called habit encoding, the system that makes action easier than avoidance. No more willpower, just rhythm. The next upgrade? Identity. Because here's the truth neuroscience confirms. Your brain adapts to the identity you practice, not the one you desire. If you practice being a fearful learner, the brain becomes that. But if you speak like your future self, your brain starts seeing that version as reality, not someday, now. So he tried it. He recorded his voice every week as if he were already fluent. Hi, I'm Daniel. I'm confident. I'm clear. I speak with purpose. It felt strange until it didn't, and the brain, listening silently, began believing it. Because repetition isn't just for vocabulary, it's for self-concept. And he was no longer repeating the story of failure. Every emotional low became a trigger for new wiring. Every awkward moment became a chance to say, I am practicing who I'm becoming. And that's how, in just a few months, he learned more than he had in 5 years. Not because he studied harder, but because he aligned emotion, repetition, and identity. And that combination unlocked something most people never find. At first, people saw a man who failed. That's how it goes. They saw the lost opportunity, the awkward silence, the closed door. But something started to shift, not in them, in him. His energy changed. He walked slower, spoke clearer, held eye contact. He wasn't chasing approval anymore. He was grounded, and grounded people draw respect. His voice was no longer rushed, no longer hidden. He started saying fewer words, but every word had weight. One day, a friend said, "You sound different lately, not just in English, but in presence." That's what happens when you stop running from who you were and start embodying who you're becoming. Confidence isn't volume, it's alignment. When you've healed through failure, your energy tells a different story. You no longer shrink in rooms where English is spoken. You stop over-apologizing, you breathe before answering, and you don't fake fluency, you own your journey. That glow, that self-respect returning, not loud, but unmistakable. And yes, others can feel it. People started listening to him more, not because his grammar was perfect, but because his energy was different. When you carry conviction in your voice, you make people pause. He's been through something, they think. That credibility doesn't come from a certificate. It comes from rising after falling. That's how leaders are born, not from victory, but from transformation. So he began showing up differently. In meetings, he stopped hiding behind safe phrases. In emails, he started writing with clarity. In conversations, he allowed pauses. And slowly, English became a tool of impact, not a symbol of fear. He wasn't just using the language, he was living in it. And that changed how the world saw him. Then came the test, an invitation to speak in front of a group, a moment that once would have terrified him. But this time, he said yes, not because he felt ready, but because he knew the only way to prove the lesson was to live it. And when he spoke, people leaned in, not for the accent, but for the honesty. He answered a question out loud, without overthinking. That one sentence felt like flying, not because it was perfect, but because it was free. He looked around the room and saw respect in people's eyes, but more importantly, he felt it in his own chest. I've come so far, he thought, and not just in English, in self-worth. That night, walking home, he smiled for no one, just himself, because he knew something sacred now. When you honor the lesson inside the failure, life starts trusting you again. Opportunities return, confidence returns, and so does the version of you that you thought was gone forever. But that's only possible when you let go of one final illusion. For a long time he kept asking, why did this happen? It felt unfair. He had worked hard, studied late, practiced every sentence, and yet he still failed. But one morning, while journaling in English, a new sentence came out. Maybe I needed to grow into the person that job required. And just like that, the pain shifted from punishment to purpose. He started speaking differently to himself, less like a critic, more like a mentor. He stopped saying, I failed, and started saying, I'm becoming. That shift from blame to becoming was everything. He practiced saying one sentence out loud every day. I grow through challenge. At first it felt like a lie, but eventually it became his rhythm. The biggest transformation: he stopped studying English like a student. He started practicing like a professional. That meant different habits. Instead of passive watching, he began speaking, out loud, intentionally. One day he recorded himself answering a full interview question. Tell me about yourself. 60 seconds. No script, just his truth. Each time he recorded himself, he met a new version of who he could be. Not someone perfect, someone present. And through this practice, something surprising happened. His identity caught up with his actions. He no longer hoped to sound fluent. He sounded like someone with purpose. And purpose has a tone of voice. One evening, looking at the city lights, he whispered, "Who am I becoming?" And the answer wasn't complicated. He was becoming someone who could walk into any room and speak, even with an accent, even with imperfections, because his value was no longer tied to performance. It was rooted in presence. He began declaring new things in his daily rituals, not just grammar drills or vocabulary lists, but identity statements. I am ready now. My voice matters. I don't need to be perfect. I need to be real. He would say them while walking to work, brushing his teeth, waiting for the bus. Repetition wasn't just for English, it was for becoming. And that's when everything changed, not because he was waiting for life to give him a second chance, but because he gave himself one. He understood. The job didn't reject him, it redirected him. It gave him a map to the version of himself that had been waiting under all the fear. And now he could finally see the road ahead. That night, he turned on his phone camera and recorded one final voice note. I'm not who I was. I'm not where I want to be, but I'm on the way, and this time I won't stop. No background music, no perfect lighting, just truth. And when you find that voice, your real voice, life starts listening. So now I'll ask you, how many opportunities have you already lost? Not because of your English, but because of your silence. How many times did you know exactly what to say, but fear stole your voice? This story wasn't just mine. It was written for the version of you still watching English videos at night, wondering if life is quietly passing you by. It's time to stop wondering. It's time to stop hiding, because English isn't just a skill, it's your future passport. It's the voice your dreams are waiting to hear. And you don't need to be perfect, you need to be present. So tell me in the comments, what sentence have you been too afraid to say, in English or in life? Let this video be your turning point. Subscribe to this channel if you're ready to learn English, not just for exams, but for transformation. Click like, leave a comment, and turn on notifications, because every week we create stories that don't just teach you English, they teach you how to become who you were meant to be.